This is a project I'm quite proud of. It is the comprehensive view of all of my health data from every health application, biometric tracking device, and even just random manual entry. This is everything. And today, I'd like to show you how I did it. So if we haven't already established, I am a gigantic nerd. I love to just optimize things, code, deal with data, and with this giant server rack behind me, I have a penchant for going and being a little extra about things, such as my health and fitness data. So I created this gigantic dashboard in Grafana, which is a data visualization service running on my Homelab, which from my last video I kept hinting at that I was going to make this video, and I'm glad that I'm finally getting around to it. It's been hard for me to create content lately, but I love talking about this. It was a lot of work, but it just runs. It's seamless. It runs perfectly all the time. It's always live updating. It's just great. So let's dive into what the heck we're looking at and how it works. What are the data sources for my health dashboard? So because I'm on Apple, an iPhone, the iOS ecosystem, I have a lot of my applications and everything are using the Apple Developer Kit to send data to Apple Health. So a lot of my stuff simply just flows into Apple Health. And because it's such a centralized source of a lot of this information, I just ended up defaulting to using that a lot. So I have all different kinds of applications. My meditation tracking, my nutrition tracking with macro factor, just to name a couple. And there's more. Everything flows into Apple Health, basically. So that is one of the pivotal sources of all of my data. The other one is my Biometrics tracking ring. This is an Oura ring. I've had this for several years now, or probably 2 years or something like that. And I wear it all the time, nonstop. And you can get your data from Oura and actually get and keep a copy if you use their APIs for the Oura ring. And it took some time, but I eventually figured out those APIs, and there was some stuff that got deprecated, and I had to, it was a mess. But eventually, I ended up getting all of my historical data, which is over 2 years of Oura ring data, and got it into a consolidated, consistent format, and I have all of my Oura data, and it updates all the time, every day. And the heart rate data updates, I think it updates like every couple minutes, because heart rate is live data. And then finally, the last source of health data that I have flowing into this whole little system here is the data from the Strong app. Now, the Strong app is how I track my workouts, but because this particular app, though I love it, does not have an API. But one thing they do have is the ability to export all of your data in its entirety to a CSV file. This is basically just what I deal with at work anyways. So all I really do is I drop that CSV file into a location, grab it, look for the deltas, add those deltas to the database table for it, and now I have new workout data, and I only process what needs to be processed. So that's kind of the system in a nutshell, or at least the data sources. Now, what's the wiring here? Where does everything connect? And that's what we're going to dive into next. So ultimately, what are the goals? The goals are to get the data from their sources into the common location of the Postgres database. Now, my Postgres database has tables for all of this information. That's kind of hard to see, but so for instance, there are 2 tables for Apple Health. I'll get into why, but it has to do with the application I'm using to export that data. So if I look at the data from these tables, and so if we look at the aggregations here, now I have to look at the last 100 rows of my data, because it's got over 28,000 or something rows now, so it's kind of hard to actually see a full accurate picture of things, because the farther back in time you go, it doesn't really have all of these aggregations. It's kind of only a couple things, and it's spotty. But these days, every particular thing in Apple Health is aggregated and exported. So for instance, I might have a sleep analysis thing here where it actually fills in some of these sleep data numbers, but a lot of the stuff that I'm looking for is like, hey, lean body mass, weight body mass, body fat percentage, zinc, mindfulness minutes. This is like the meditation stuff, saturated fat, iron. So all the different things and components that you can get in Apple Health get aggregated, exported into this particular format where for a particular day, each row is one of those items with definitions about what the units are and what the quantity is. This allows me to easily grab lots of rows where name equals, say, mindfulness minutes, where the unit is minutes, and I can actually do, like, say, a bar chart or line graph or something where it says over a duration of time, the amount of minutes, the unit, has been equal to quantity because I have trended historical data that goes based on date stamps. So is easily able to take this particular data format and put it into Postgres. And this is immediately how it is exported from the application that I use to export Apple Health data. And because this just isn't related to sleep, you can see that this doesn't fill in anything for sleep. It's just null. But you can also see the different data sources. So a lot of this data is coming from, there's some stuff coming from Oura, even though I grab Oura data. There's macro factor data, there's just plain iPhone. There's a lot of different data sources in here. But this is like the source for my Apple Health data, the main stuff. The other type of data that you can get from the source that I'm using is aggregated data for symptomology. Now, symptoms are just another subset of things that you can do in Apple Health. There's a section where you can actually go in and modify and add data for symptoms. So if you have like a scratchy throat, a fever, coughing, whatever, you can actually enter that into Apple Health and have data on your symptoms from illnesses or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that you can put in here, but those are like the main things from Apple Health that I have exported.
The best ways to support the channel are, if you're going to do it on an ongoing basis, GitHub sponsors because they take no fees, followed by Patreon. If you're going to do like a one-time thing, buy me a coffee, PayPal, or just fine. And if you just want to support me without any money involved, the best thing you can do is like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and that's it.
Now, as for exporting Apple Health data, I use this application called Auto Export. Now, it is a paid application, and you can do a lifetime subscription. I think it's like $25, and I'd rather do that than a subscription. So I paid once, and what you can do with this thing is you can set like auto sync or whatever. There's a lot of ways you can do backup, but really what this is there's no great way of dealing with Apple Health data unless you use the Apple Developer Kit, or basically have an application that accesses the Developer Kit. So with this, I simply set up prior day's health metrics using a REST API, sending all this data to a webhook in N8N, which I'll show that later, and it grabs all the health metrics for a period of it grabs it for every day, and it grabs it for so it just grabs it for every day. I thought I had a different kind of automation set up, but essentially it just grabs everything every day and sends it to the database, which then does a delta comparison and then sends data on only the data that needs to be sent. And the same thing for the symptomology. It just says every day, send that data and send it to the database. And it just works. It just is always running. And it does allow you to do like manual exports. You can have it develop custom shortcuts that can display on your screen. For instance, on my screen, I have this, this little section here where it just shows the status of the 2 jobs that I run. But there's all different kinds of things here you can do. You can see like your workout data, your individual metrics if you want, statistics. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it, but really all I'm doing with it is exporting it into my Postgres database via the N8N webhook. So, continuing on, let's actually look at what the webhook looks like. Because otherwise, if I just bounce around too much, it might get confusing. So, that application, auto export, takes all the data per day, puts it into a packet, a JSON packet, and shoots it at a URL, like google.com. It just shoots it at a URL. The URL that it is going to is the N8N webhook, which is essentially like a landing pad saying, hey, something is supposed to land here. I expect something to land here. So it's waiting to receive a post request, if you know API stuff. So it's sitting there waiting for a request, and for the health metrics specifically, it is waiting at this webhook URL, and it is waiting to receive a post request. That's it. And so that URL that it is waiting for is one that I have exposed via the Cloudflare tunnel, or the whatever, I've exposed it to the public internet so it can receive the request that it is supposed to be receiving. And so using the Cloudflare stuff, this means that I am able to, no matter where I am, able to send this packet of data from my Apple Health to this webhook point, which then grabs that data, parses it using this monstrosity of JavaScript so that it simply formats all of this data into a tabular format, and then does a delta comparison and drops it into the Postgres database. So insert or update, upsert, essentially. It only updates and inserts new data, nothing that is from a prior insertion. So it does that, but for both health metrics and symptoms, because there's two jobs, two webhook endpoints, and two whole processes to put it into two different tables. And that is how all of the Apple Health data that I have flows into the Postgres database, where it is then displayed via Grafana. This was not the first iteration of this project. There was, in fact, a prior iteration of the project, and it was horrendous. Let me show you more about that. What you're seeing now is my first attempt at doing a comprehensive service for managing all of my health data. This whole project, I was trying to do it through Python originally. Good Lord, it was complex. Like, I'm having to look at, models and common just data class stuff. It was just insane. Like, all the amount of code that I needed to have like different types of processing, and just like dealing with Apple Health data was really kind of the thing that killed this project, because there was a lot of stuff in my historic Apple Health data, especially stuff that came from an Apple Watch, that was just absolutely jank. Like, it was stuff is in the wrong columns. You had numbers in string columns, strings in number columns, and just all the data mappings were wrong, and I had to like filter out large swaths of information, pick exactly the keys that I wanted to look for, and just all of this code. And look at all these files. Look at all these files. Just to have different models for different types of data, to have, testing, git commit hooks, to Dockerize it, to grab the Docker container from the GitHub container registry into my Portainer instance, to spin up a container, to have the service live, requirements maintenance, just a make file to easily do like testing and running stuff. And like, it was nuts, like legitimately nuts. This whole thing was so much work, effort, and just debugging hours spent on this. Ultimately, to have that. To have a Postgres table, to have a little bit of parsing JavaScript, to have one application, shoot a JSON packet, add a webhook. That $25 was worth the app payment simply for the time that I now saved from having to deal with all that. Because even then, having to deal with Apple Health, I was going to have to export manually all the Apple Health historic data into these giant monstrosity XML files, and some JSON files for the Fire clinical health data from whatever clinical sources you have hooked up to your Apple Health. And it's just a mess, versus having an application connect directly to it with the Apple Developer Kit, sending only the prior day's data as summarized rows. So maybe like 100 records, 100 rows of data per day, sent once a day to an endpoint. Now it's in the database. So much easier. So that's Apple Health. Long way to get here, long road, but now that it's configured, it's actually probably the most robust part of all this workflow, except maybe Oura, because the strong app stuff, that took some duct tape and band-aids. But the Apple Health setup, I'm really, really happy with. And the displays that I get from it, from the data are really nice, like exercise data, macros, body composition, vitamins, micronutrients, minerals, just sound exposure, meditation, you name it. Just I got all different kinds of Apple Health data. If it can go into Apple Health, I can export it and grab it, and it is awesome. So now that Apple Health is done, what about Oura? Let's start with the next easiest one. Now with Oura data, I get a lot of like live data. So for instance, if I change my filter here on Grafana to like the last 7 days, I can see a lot of good heart rate data. So like this is all heart rate data from my Oura ring, and it's just nonstop live all the time. It doesn't have calorie burned here for some reason, but you know, my sleep breakdown, I got a good night's sleep last night. Steps, activity, the Oura scores, if you know about that. I don't have too much of my stuff in here from Oura, surprisingly, but I do have all of this main stuff. What I was really concerned about was like the sleep stuff, the scores, activity, and yeah, maybe steps, and then the actual heart rate data. This is really the stuff I was wanting from Oura, and it's kind of all you really get. Like there is some like Oura tags and things that you can do, but given Apple Health and the stuff I just do with that, automations with shortcuts or manual entry, it's just not worth it. So I don't bother. But I have all of this data from Oura. So Oura was a little bit easier in a way than all the Apple Health stuff before I got the auto export, because Oura has standard APIs. So I was able to go to the Oura site, and I forget if I can even get there again. Oura API v2. This is what I had to use. Now in N8N there was pre-built nodes, so I don't think they have them in here anymore. Oh, they do. Okay, yeah. So there was these three: get, sleep, get readiness, get activity. So I had those three: sleep, readiness, activity, and then I just had workouts, tags, and heart rate. Now tags I don't use. Workouts I don't really use, but I just want the data, just because I'm a data hoarder. But because I had these three nodes from N8N, that was, I guess, their version 1 API, and it was deprecated. So I didn't know it for a while because I didn't have error handling set up yet. But these first three nodes all were failing, and therefore caused the entire job to fail. So I was missing like a month of Oura data, and I didn't know why. But eventually I figured it out, and then wrote the rest of these. But essentially, Oura has an API which allows you to get your aggregated data for given time frames and all this. So I just looked at this documentation, figured out how to do the things, and now I have every 10 minutes 6 API calls go and grabs me the data and does an upsert operation. Pretty much all these operations are upsert, so that way only new data is collected and inserted into the database. No duplicates, no handling duplicates. So it just sends that information, sends a call, grabs it for the time frame, the date parameters, and actually, let me see here. Set date parameters. Yeah, so what Oura does, the way that I have Oura running, is in case there's ever any sort of missed operation, because sometimes I get like, things time out or whatever, every time I send a request, it grabs the last 7 days of aggregated data for each of these items and then does an upsert. So if it's only yesterday's data that's missing, then I only upsert 1 day's worth of data for any of these things. But that way it's just a constant safety net of, hey, if my server, for instance, goes down for a couple days and I can't figure out how to get it back up, and once I finally get it back up, I don't have to worry about chasing down missing data from any of my jobs, because I've had a large swath of time, 7 days worth of time, that this will just easily cover for and do an upsert operation in the future. So this just calls to the API, drops the data into the Postgres tables, and yeah, it's pretty good to go at that point. Like readiness summary, let's see, the last 100. There's a lot of Oura data tables because there's like 6 API calls, 6 tables. So like I won't go through all of them, but it just updates every single day. There's the date stamp, and yeah, 6/15. So here's the prior day's data. Bam. So that's Oura. So now the last thing is the Strong app data. So in Strong, it's all of my workout data because I like the Strong app. So let's take a look about how we have to do this. So if I take a look at the application, Strong will show me this option inside the app. So I have to go through the application, go here, and I have to export Strong data. And so from there, I will export that to OneDrive and just drop it into my files. Bam, just like that. And from that point on, I am done with the Strong app. Everything else is done in my server. So now that that file is there, I now get to go to my OneDrive, and you can see that there are several Strong files here. I'm actually going to delete that one and rename that one. Okay, so essentially, I just dropped the Strong app data. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Essentially, I just shared the Strong app data export, the CSV file, into my OneDrive, which is attached to my MacBook because that's just how you can do things. So you can think of it as if this is sitting in a folder in my MacBook. Now, what I have on my MacBook is a script that runs on a timer that checks for this file. So I have managed to set up cron on my MacBook, even though it's not the way that things are supposed to be working on Mac anymore, but I like cron, so deal with it. But I have this particular script running on my cron tab, so every interval, I think it might be every minute, it runs this. So essentially, here's a source directory, which is the OneDrive, and the target is on my NAS, which is a particular folder, which we'll go to. And essentially, if the Strong CSV file exists, then move it to the target area. That's it. Yeah, so Brian, why didn't you just export the file straight to your NAS area? Because from my phone, I can't easily do that. So this works, and it works fine. I'm not exporting Strong app data every few minutes. I do it like once every couple days, or maybe once a day at that. But for now, what you can see is that the Strong CSV file here, I need to actually download it from OneDrive. Like it shows here, but it's not actually downloaded yet, hence that little cloud icon. So I need to download that, and then it will get picked up by that script in the cron tab, goes to Homelab, Services, Strong App Import, Inbound, which is nothing because there's nothing in there yet because the script hasn't run yet. Now you can see it got dropped in. There's the file. So then N8N looks for that file on a timer, grabs it, and as you just saw, processes the file and adds a date stamp to the beginning of it to show that it's been processed, and that is how it operates. So now the Grafana data is updated. I can refresh it, and if there's anything in here that has been updated, like, hey, this from the 11th, that's new. That has now been added. So how does all of that work? So inside of N8N, I have some notes here for instance 2. This is the script on my client machine, the cron tab, and so this runs every minute, grabs the file, puts it into the NAS directory, and then this, every 1 minute, checks to see if the file exists, because remember, the file shares from the NAS are mounted to Proxmox, to the Debian VM, to the Portainer containers, and N8N is running in a container. So N8N does in fact have mapped access to this directory. So it can actually check to see if that file is in the location in the Homelab directory, and if there is a new file inside of the input directory, or if there is a new file because it found one, if there isn't, do nothing. If there is, then grab the latest date from the Strong App Data table. So it grabs what's the most recent date. And so then we load the data, which is grab all of the information from the CSV file. We read it. This is what I had to do in order to actually run a delta operation. So then we filter deltas, and anything occurring after the last date in the database. So then 2 actions occur after that. Only the kept information is sent to the different flows here. So one of them is rename keys, which renames like these field names with like spaces and proper casing into all lower snake case keys for the database table, so that I can run an insert operation and all the columns are mapped because they have the names from the renamed keys. Then it runs the archive, which is, hey, take the file and then put it into the processed folder and move it while adding a date stamp. So that way it's uniquely kept. That way, across all these iterations, I can just keep a historical record of all the files. But also, after filtering the deltas, it generates a metrics report, which is just all of that code, and sends that metrics report as a pushover notification, which I will show you presently. So if I start my screen recording and I go to pushover, you can see that the pushover notification was received by the strong application there, and it says import successful, new records 66, and the date range of the starting date that was new information, and then the last date that was new information. If I exported this for just 1 day's data, that date would be the same for both of those fields. But this tells me that I had data from the 11th and potentially anything in between there to the 13th, and including the 13th. So all of those days of data have now been successfully imported into the Postgres table, which looks like this. So actually, if I refresh this, we'll see the latest data, 13. So, the workout name, the duration of the workout. Sadly, this is not flattened data. Whatever, it's good enough. It's a model I can deal with. And so then the name of the exercise, which is duplicated based on the sets for that exercise, the weight of each of those individual sets, this can be different, the reps for those individual sets, and if there's something like distance, like if it was running or rowing, there's that. If it's a duration for a hold, like a plank, there's seconds for duration. Then there's notes, if there are any. Sometimes there are, often there's not. It's like individual notes for an exercise. Then there's workout notes, which can be for the workout overall, which, okay, ab wheel rollouts were more extended than ever before in my life, likely due to the eccentric on cable crunches over time, blah, blah, blah. Comments for myself, just like logging. And then RPE, if I use it, which I'm not really doing, powerlifting anymore, so I don't really use RPE much anymore. And then now that data's there in Postgres, this can be refreshed, and now you can see, oh, hey, in my workout log, here is the record. Now, this only shows me records from workouts, essentially the workout notes, where the workout notes are not null. So in this case, I can have like a running log of any sort of workout notes provided here in a workout log from that historical data. Then I can just see like an actual list of all of the actual workouts themselves, regardless of log entries, the names of them, and then the duration in minutes. So I can just have that information. And then some stuff I'm interested in tracking. I have pull-ups, dips, and push-ups, kind of like the bread and butter of calisthenics. And then like the dates of these personal bests, like the max pull-ups I've done in a single set, the max pull-ups I've done in a single workout. And then I have like actual weight metrics over here. So for pull-ups or any sort of pull-up variation, the max amount of weight I've done with it. Same thing for dips, same thing for push-ups. I don't do a lot of push-ups, so whatever, I'm mostly on dips. So I also do have like these gauges here, which I use for measuring my grip strength, which I'm not great about doing consistently, but if I zoom to the historical data, you can see like some changes in my grip strength for each individual hand. So that's just some fun information. And all of this flows from the Strong app. And the data is pretty decent. Like, this is how it's structured straight from the CSV. I didn't have to change any of this. The only thing different is that it adds a row ID. So one thing I'm doing, the last component of all of this fitness data is getting all of the historical stuff in. So Apple Health, we're good. Oura, we're good. All the historical stuff is in, all of it. With the workout data, I have years and years of notebooks where I hand wrote workouts and kept all this information, because I remember reading like the books by Bruce Lee or about Bruce Lee and how like meticulous he was about writing his workouts. So I've been writing workouts in notebooks since I was in high school, and I kept a lot of records. So what I've been doing is, actually I should just move these views over. There we go. Okay, so we'll go to that and to that. So like what I've done is, just to make it easier, instead of having to flip through a physical book, is I just took pictures of all the pages. So I have like a particular 2 days of workouts, or actually 3 days, surprisingly, of workouts here, where I go through and I manually enter data into this spreadsheet to digitize it. And this spreadsheet, if you already notice, is not the same format as Strong, because this is actually a part of the project I've been doing for a lot longer than this whole automation thing. And so I'm kind of just finishing it up, doing it all the same way, so that then what I can do is I can just manipulate en masse this spreadsheet to then be in the Strong app format, which will be much easier once it's all in like these configurable cells. That'll just be a lot easier. So this is how I'm, getting the last bit of data. And I only have like 1 year worth of workouts, which sounds like a lot, but for recorded workouts, not really. I've gotten all the other years of data, but I'm down to like 1 year left. And then once I have all that data, it's all going to be in the spreadsheet, going to get converted and get added to the historical record here in the Strong app table, just so I can have it all consistent. And I'll probably just name it all something like historical record or historical data, because I'm not going to have a lot of like time or workout name or exact time, whatever. So I'll figure it out. But ultimately, that's how all of that information from Strong gets in there. And now I have all of this data from Apple, from Oura, from Strong, and all of my stuff is in this dashboard, which is publicly exposed via the Cloudflare tunnel. So I can access this anywhere, which means that I can go to my doctor's office and I can answer questions about anything related to my dietary intake, to my vitals, to my exercise routine, heart rate, body mass, body composition, exact workout information. I have it all, and I have it all accessible, which I love. One of the perks about MacroFactor 2 that I didn't talk about in my prior video is that MacroFactor does integrate with Apple Health. So anytime I say I eat a food in MacroFactor, it connects to Apple Health and updates the values for things like iron or carbs, protein, magnesium, like whatever. It updates all of these micronutrients, minerals, vitamins, and of course the macros, and that goes to Apple Health directly. So I have Apple Health grabbing all of the analytics and information about my micronutrient intake from MacroFactor. So if I also have my multivitamin, that puts my vitamins constantly in a very happy place. So it's just great. And then ultimately, because I have all that data from MacroFactor, I have another dashboard, which is just my annual summary dashboard, where just for, kicks, I have like an overall aggregation for the year of what are the total calories I've eaten. This is all stuff that has to be tracked in applications, so there's always room for error. Total caloric consumption, total protein, total fat, total carbs, total water intake, and then my total amount of time spent meditating, the days that I've had meditation. I'm doing very bad this year. And then my workout stuff. So how much total time, active time in workouts have I spent this year? So thus far, if we look at days on a 24-hour cycle, so we're not thinking about sleep periods, but a nonstop 24 hours, I've spent 3 days, 3 hours, and 32 minutes working out this year. Total amount of pull-ups, dips, push-ups, and the walking, running distance traveled, essentially, aggregated for the whole year, all from these analytics. I can go back to last year, and I have data going back several years. It's not very comprehensive, because some things like 2017, I don't have much of anything from these dates, because it's all like Apple Health driven. And then, okay, so there's some stuff from Apple Health. So I don't really have a lot here until I started getting MacroFactor and started tracking a couple other things. So where are we? 2021, 22, we start getting a little bit more. Okay, 40 for meditation, nice. 2023, wow, that's when I was actually doing some decent meditation. 150 days with meditation. I need to get back onto that. So, yeah, that's overall, that is the system. My over-engineered, highly nerdy and technical system for managing and doing everything with all of my health and fitness data. Brian, why did you do this? Well, because it's fun. I am a data nerd. I have servers, why not put them to use? I wanted to test my skills, and now I have a quantifiable life. Like, I have data points for everything I'm doing in my life, and I can easily just give this data to clinicians and share this. And one day, when I get even nerdier about it, I might spin up some machine learning algorithms and start running like multiple linear regression models on this data as it relates to other facets of data, because I have all my data. Like, I'm not relying on a company to store and maintain this data in the same consistent formats and accessibility options. Like, no, I have it all. It's all in my database. I have it. So I can run machine learning algorithms on my own data. I can do whatever I want. I'm a nerd. I have the tools. So that's the project. I love talking about this crap, and hopefully you enjoyed listening to it, because I'm really proud of this product. So, yeah. Bye!